venit momentul să ne pregătim pentru David Parmenter. David e pregătit, cu siguranță e pregătit deja de vreo 20 de minute. Îl știți probabil. Probabil i-ați citit cărțile, dacă nu convingătoare, cred că e puțin spus. Va fi convingătoare prezentarea lui de astăzi. El este de altfel supranumit, fără să mă lungesc acum foarte mult în introducerea lui, e supranumit The King of KPI, pentru că dacă și în literatura de specialitate s-a vorbit atât de mult și deja de multă vreme despre felul în care pot fi sistematizați indicatorii unui proiect sau indicatorii de performanță, nimeni nu i-a sistematizat și nu i-a intercorelat atât de bine și de o manieră atât de logică precum David. Așa că cred că e momentul să-l ascultăm.
Many thanks for the kind introduction. And salutare calorosa din Noua Zeelandă. KPIs are well and truly broken. They're broken not just in Romania, they've broken down right across the world. And why they've broken down is that we are, especially in the larger companies, we're measuring too much. We have called every single measure a KPI. But how can all your measures be key to your organization? Because I'll tell you something, that there cannot be a monthly measure in your organization that is key to your performance, because it is far too late. The horse is bolted. The month has gone. I have yet to find a monthly measure that has ever changed performance. We need them because they help us say how we've done, but they don't change performance. But worse, some organizations are measuring too many financial measures, when the real measures that change performance are non-financial measures. The balanced scorecard has come to Romania some time ago, and it has caused some problems because they introduced the concept of cascading measures down. Customer satisfaction, return on capital employed, staff satisfaction measures, which were looked at the head office level, were then cascaded down into units, departments. And I would argue you only have chaos if you cascade measures down. We need to have measures that reside on the top of the cliff. And we need to separate measures from any form of performance-related pay if those measures are what you consider are key to driving performance. Because if you link a KPI to pay, it becomes a different animal. It becomes a key performance indicator. What we have here is a picture. We have a picture of the KPIs. And in an organization, many organizations have a very clear strategic direction. But unfortunately, teams are not following that. They're going in many different directions. And we need to see, we need to ensure that all organizations, all parts of our company are flowing in the same direction. What I want to talk about to you today is I want to talk to you about all these areas here. And can I just have confirmation that you can hear me now? Can you hear me? Thank you. Lovely. So what I want to do, everybody, is I want to talk to you about a KPI story. Late planes in the sky. It is about British Airways and how Lord King turned around the airline, focusing on one KPI. He was asked to come in to sort the airline out, and he asked the firm of very expensive consultants to come in and look at British Airways. And they came back to Lord King and said, you only need to focus on one critical success factor: timely arrival and departure of aeroplanes. And Lord King, of all the planes that are late, we're going to focus on a certain sample, planes that are over 2 hours late, and we will sort those ones out first. And Lord King was instructed to phone all the managers around the world who had been responsible for making a plane kick over into 2 hours late. And these managers, when they received the phone call, knew that they didn't want another phone call in the near future. It was seen as a career-limiting phone call, if you'd like to put it bluntly. And so what happened by Lord King just focusing on this one measure, managers around the British Airways entity would make sure that if a late plane was coming into land, that they did their utmost to bring it back on time. Whereas before, they had simply said, it's not my problem, but we've inherited somebody else's mess. It changed the whole philosophy of British Airways. Likewise, in a company that delivers freight, in Australia, the CEO monitors every single truck that has gone underweight on a long journey. And they get a communique on their mobile phone. And they then can make the phone call and ask why this happened. And again, the staff involved know that this is being monitored 24/7 or daily in the case of the freight company, And if you stuff it up, you'll get a phone call, and it is not a clever idea to get too many. All these two examples of performance measures at work have a number of characteristics that make them special. They're non-financial. They're timely. There's a CEO focus to them. They are very simple. If your CEO asked you tomorrow, please could you increase staff satisfaction, I don't blame you if you looked a little bit quizzical, because HR certainly has a big influence on staff satisfaction, but of course it is a result of everything working in the company either well or not so well. And so it is a result of many things that take place. And that is why staff satisfaction was never a KPI. It is a key result indicator. It's a great summary of how you've worked together in the organization, but it will never change performance. KPIs are team-based. You can pick up a phone and ring somebody. They have a very broad impact. And last but no means least, they have a limited dark side, meaning that the negative part of the measure is minor. And I'll come onto this point a little bit later. This lucky family in front of you here are two sets of identical twins. And one set, let's call them result indicators. For argument's sake, I've called them Harry and Oscar. And Annie and Eliza, let's call them performance indicators. What is the difference? The difference is where you have measures that summarize collective effort of many teams working together. It's a useful measure, but it will never improve performance because nobody is responsible for it. You can't phone anybody. Whereas with performance indicators, you can phone somebody because the responsibility lies with the team. Many years ago, I came up with a rule, and it seems to have stood the test of time. I call it the 10-80-10 rule. 10 key result indicators. In one agency in Switzerland, we had to rename these as board KPIs because the board were beyond education in this case. And so we couldn't say they weren't KPIs. So we called them board KPIs. I don't mind which way you go on this, but don't call them operational KPIs, because that is at the core of your business, and it should not and should never have been reported to the board. The board should have governance measures, and they should be looking at measures that tell a story of the past, where we, managing our organization, need to measure the here and now. And I believe in all the organizations sitting in the room today, I believe all of you could have no more than 10 KPIs. So what are key result indicators? They are there's a picture here, and I believe it won't be particularly large for you because we're obviously showing my picture on the screen at the same time. But rest assured, you will get access to a PDF copy of this slide deck, so you can see it at your leisure later. But these are sorts of measures like customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, I've already mentioned. And these lie in that yellow, where that yellow bar is on the screen. We're measuring last month, we're measuring last quarter, last year. Whereas KPIs are totally different. They're like a fence at the top of a cliff. They are stopping things happening. They are stopping late planes, and they are forcing people to bring those planes back on time. It is said that within 14 months of the KPI working in British Airways, late planes due to human error were a thing of the past. Now, KPIs, in my language, are something that you would look at last week's data, today, or yesterday's transactions, and maybe look into the future, because you can measure the future even though it has not yet happened. So, for example, you can measure how many recognitions has the CEO got planned for next week, next fortnight, to celebrate success in the organization. There's a definition of KPIs here, and it says they focus on the aspects or areas of our organizational's performance that are critical or vital for the ongoing and future success. And examples of this are late deliveries to our key customers, staff in our organization who are underutilized, particularly if we charge them out. And what about if you've got somebody who you want to join the company and they still have not signed the contract and it's over 24 hours old? I believe that should be reported right high up the chain, and for certain jobs reported to the CEO so that they make a phone call to try and get that person to sign. Likewise, if you have a key person resigning, it's often too late, but at least the CEO can make a phone call if that person is critical to the organization. We may find that the situation could be turned around. So I'm saying to you, everybody, but the definition of KPIs needs to change, and needs to change now. What I'd like you to do is, could you please talk to a person next to you? Make sure nobody is left out, but there's no group bigger than 3. If you're in 4, split into 2 groups of 2. You can do the maths. And I want you to talk about, what do you think, to what extent you agree with these characteristics?
Profit de această foarte scurtă întrerupere pentru a vă spune că avem cam 1 minut, 2 să pregătim exercițiul ăsta, deci puteți vorbi și totodată spre final o să puteți să notați, nu știu dacă a apucat Doru să vă spună înainte sau nu, o să puteți să notați câteva întrebări și Vlad îi le va trimite, astfel încât să putem să avem și un dialog, chiar dacă e oarecum virtual.
Okay, everybody. I just wanted to... Okay, thank you for that. Everybody, if I was to ask you to give me a blood sample and I took it to a DNA expert, they would prove to you and to me that your ancestors knew how to sort the wheat from the chaff. This very ancient process that is shown in the picture. And I urge you, in fact, I am begging you, I am begging you to go back to your organization and start sorting your measures between those that are result indicators and those that are performance indicators. And using those 6 characteristics, you will very quickly find the sort. And it will be a very big step forward. Now, I need to know, and we've all seen the Gladiator film, I'm sure. Where are you so far with what I've been saying to you? This means, David, I'm with you so far. This means, David, oh, you're challenging me, but I'm still listening. And this means, David, wow, this is far too much, too radical for me. Show me your thumb now. I need to see your thumb. Make sure I want everybody to vote with their thumb, because I will be told roughly how many thumbs up I'm getting. Thank you. Thank you for voting. So what I want to do now is go on the journey to take us now to critical success factors. And I just, the critical success factors are like a big bang. And this big bang that created the planet as we know it today, that is what the scientists tell us. I'm saying to you, the critical success factors in your organization should be the only thing that drives measures. The only thing that drives measures. We should not have people dreaming up measures just because they're responsible for a team or a project. It has to come and be linked to what is important to the organization. Because if it's not important, why are we measuring it? I understand that we've got an overwhelming positive response, and That's probably the highest score I've ever got. But I've always known the Romanians were the cleverest audience I've ever spoken to. How about a critical success factor called recruiting the right people all the time? Now, everybody, I want to find out, could you put your hand up if you have recruited somebody you live to regret? And I can tell by the noise, there's quite a few hands gone up. Now, one of the things that great companies do is make less recruiting mistakes. Peter Drucker said, recruiting was a life and death decision. Far better to spend 40 hours getting the recruitment right rather than 400 hours sorting out the mess at the bottom of the cliff. Another critical common one is innovation is a daily activity, or delivery in full on time all the time to our key customers. In my room, in my office today, I have my younger daughter. My younger daughter, she happens to be 22 years old, looking for work. And should she work in a dispatch area, and she was asked to send out 100 deliveries, 98 easy ones, and 2 very difficult ones. How would Claudine look at the day? I can guarantee you she would target the 98, because 98% in our household is a very good mark. And in fact, in reality, we should have only measured the 2 and said to the staff, the others, do what you can, but we'll not measure you on them. So we got to segregate measures as to what is important to the business and what is not. Because I can guarantee you that in all the great towns, villages, and cities in Romania, you have some customers that you would rather not have. Why should you be measuring them? In fact, if they say to you, because the delivery was late, we're now leaving, you should get out the champagne and celebrate. One of the things, the balanced scorecard, where it caused a lot of problems, was that it encouraged us to cascade down. In your beautiful country, you have many fine mountains, and you have many, you have beautiful ski slopes. I've seen them. And you have beautiful waterfalls. But don't ever confuse the beauty of cascading water to cascading measures or cascading critical success factors. There should be one set of critical success factors for your company, the whole organization, 5 to 8 statements of what is important that we should do right day in, day out, without failure. This secret was discovered when British Airways focused on timely arrival and departure of planes. I'm only asking you to look at your organization, find out your success factors, and then separate them from those that are critical to those that are not. There's a process that I've documented and fine-tuned. And in fact, I am just writing as we speak my 4th edition of my book. And I believe now more than ever before that the methodology is suitable right here and now, particularly for all the Romanian companies sitting in the room today. And it is due to a family crisis why I'm not with you today. Because I love coming to Romania. I have had some magnificent hospitality, the best I've ever had in the world with you all. And so it was great sadness that I had to cancel. But I had to because my wife became critically ill 2 weeks today. She was admitted to hospital, but the good news is that the medical profession are assuring us of a full recovery in due time. But nevertheless, I will be based in New Zealand for the foreseeable future. But I believe that we still can help each other by getting critical success factors into Romanian companies through using webinar technology like we're doing today. I train organizations, and we could train a whole cluster of companies represented in the room simultaneously. I'll come on to this a bit later. What are critical success factors? Well, they're a list of issues or aspects of organizational performance that determine ongoing health, vitality, and well-being. It's a bit of a mouthful, but every word is important. And when it's translated into Romanian, we just have to be so careful with the translation. Each word has lasted in my work alone for now 20 years, and I inherited it from another piece of work, a masterpiece called the KPI manual. How do critical success factors and strategy work together? Well, strategy changes day-to-day business strategically and often through secret negotiations. But the critical success factors work on whatever you've got to do in that business as usual area, and it works 24/7. And that is why it's so important. Now, I understand that the Romanian team did not make the World Cup in 2018, and nor did New Zealand. So you're in good company. So, but let's work it out. I believe if you do not have on your wall, in your office, or in your meeting rooms, a simple statement that says the critical success factors in our organization are as follows. It's like Cosmin Contra taking your national team to the 2020 Euros with an extra striker and leaving out the goalkeepers. You'll score plenty of goals, but you'll let them in at a faster rate. I have a methodology that I believe would be very powerful for your organizations. And maybe some of you in the room have already been exposed to it. How many people have already attended one of my Romanian sessions? Could you put your hands up, please? And could I get told what percentage? Okay, so, but we haven't repeated much then, have we? Oh, that's good. Well, the good news for all of you is I have made it simpler. I used to have a 12-stage process. It's now 3-stage, but the 12 parts or the 12 steps are embedded in it. what I'd like to focus you on, and I do not expect you to be able to read the slide, but just bear with me here, is the lower part of the slide are 7 foundation stones to this project. And I am going to give you all a beta version of my 4th edition chapter on this, so you can read at your leisure. We need a partnership between staff unions and third parties. We need to make sure that the people at the shop floor, the sales staff making the sales, or the people in the call centers can make decisions without referring on. In other words, we must transfer power to the front line in these key areas. We need to ensure that all measures are sourced from the critical success factors. So now we know we're measuring something that's important. We need to have a KPI team trained and working in this area with one person as a specialist. And I will give you a job description of what that specialist should be doing. And last but no means least, I want to emphasize the great man. Who here in the room has read some of Peter Drucker's work? Could I be told how many? What percent? Okay, 30%. That's good. Now, everybody, there is a brilliant book called The Definitive Drucker. And I think you can see it on the slide. Is that correct? Excellent. This man, this great man, I consider to be Leonardo da Vinci of management. In 400 years from now, we will understand his work much better than we do now. Likewise with Da Vinci. Why don't we embrace his work? And if you follow me by reading that book called The Definitive Drucker, written in the last year of his life, hand-picked author, interviewed Drucker, and put 32 volumes of work in a masterpiece. And Drucker said, don't tell me what you're about to start. First tell me what you have agreed to abandon. In a KPI project, if you do not embrace abandonment, the project cannot work. We need to embrace abandonment of the staff who are on the project, what they're doing, and we've got to transfer their role and push their workload elsewhere or get rid of it. And we need to abandon a lot of the measures that were dreamed up incorrectly in the past. Stage 1 of this process is getting the enterprise committed. Now, everybody, some of you will have questions, and it's really important that we have an active question and answer session. I need you to write in Romanian on a bit of paper any question that you've been thinking about. Hold it up, please, and somebody will take it or pass it down your row. And now somebody will take it to Doro, and Doro will handpick some of them, and those questions will be relayed to me. And that's how we are going to do the question and answer session. So please get writing now. So stage 1 is getting your organization ready for this change. And one of the things I have learned is, as you already know, selling change is a lot about psychology. We as human beings are driven to follow our default future. The only way you can change people is to ensure that you paint the current default future in all its gory detail and then say, is that really where you want to go? Is that really what the company's about? And only when they see that will they say, hell no, we don't want to go there. What's the other option? And then you introduce the new future. A genius book in this area is Steve Zaffron, spelt with a Z, and Dave Logan. And I will give you a PDF, a précis of their book, and in the download. I urge you to read it, along with a very good article, my chapter on leading change. And that chapter covers the great work of John Cotter, which I'm sure some of you will be aware. But we need to get everybody, the staff and management on board. And there are a number of steps that are explained in that. There's 5 steps. One of the most important things is the CEO in your organization must be indoctrinated and believe that this process is right. If they have no interest in this project, may I suggest that you buy a season ticket for a ski field and don't waste your time trying to do a KPI project. We need this project to succeed. It has to succeed through the CEO. But likewise, we have to make sure we make the project exciting to the CEO. So we constantly need to sell the good news to the CEO. We must have an elevator pitch ready all the time, every week during the project. So whenever we bump into the CEO, we tell the CEO the good news. To ascertain the operational critical success factors, there are 3 ways of doing it. The first way, the most common way, is by getting all the oracles in the organization in one room. This is not a job for a freshly qualified MBA graduate who's come in with very little understanding of the organization, but a very good understanding of theory. We need those people with a minimum of 5 years experience in the business, and we get them in the room and they help us on this journey. There is another way, and that is where we have a 2-day workshop with just the executive team in an executive retreat. And I did that recently in Canada. It just so happened to be at a ski field, which was very convenient. Third, we can run these 2-day workshops through a series of 3-hour webinars. And that is what I'm very keen to talk with you and with Doro about, is the possibility of changing a 2-day Romanian workshop into a 3-hour series. And the good news is it can be hosted inside your organization without anybody traveling anywhere.
Yes, for sure, it's possible.
That's right.
Hi, David.
Yeah. Stage 3. The other thing to do is we now need to determine measures. We need to get them to work. And in order to do that, we need to hold in our organization a 2-day workshop. And in my 4th edition, as with all my books, I give all the electronic media about how you go about this process. And you end up, as the picture you can see, is a lot of work is done and it's stuck on walls, and staff then help in that, who've created it, help in that process of thinning it down. The net result, everybody, why do you want to do all this hard work? Is because we now can send measures to your CEO on their mobile phone, and they can make phone calls, and they can change performance, they can correct things, they can celebrate things in the here and now, instead of reading a monthly report. A monthly report that, like this, that travels in the briefcase home. It travels back to the office. It goes home again and back again. Never read. We cannot afford measures to be like this. We want measures to be in the here and now. Can I just check, have we got some questions finding their way through yet? So, yes, that's lovely. Now, everybody, what I want to do as these questions are being prepared is talk about some myths. Now, myths are very important because myths prevent. They prevent us from doing something, and it's a false understanding. The first picture to your left is a ticket to the game. And I'm just going to close my webcam so you can see this a little bit bigger. It's a ticket to a Chelsea game. I'm a Chelsea supporter. Now, what I'm trying to say by this ticket is that KPIs in your organization, when we find them, should be deemed an expectation, and we shouldn't reward. In other words, if you can't get planes arriving and leaving on time, why don't you work for somebody else? You're expected to do well here. That's why you've joined us. We don't want to mix it with pay, because then the KPI stands for key political indicator. They will be manipulated to increase pay, and they are far too important. The picture to your right shows a horse running. Now, every single measure you have in your organization that is monthly is just like this horse. The month has gone. And looking at that measure is useful, but it will not tell you to shut the gate during the months because it's too late. You need a measure that tells you that the gate has been left open and it's shut immediately so the horse cannot bolt. So I'm not totally against monthly measures. I understand you will have some, but they should be a minority, not a majority. There is a picture here of the moon. And in my day, when I was at university, there was a great album called Dark Side of the Moon. And I'm sure many of you know the music. I want you on the next clear night to look up at the moon, and you are looking at a performance measure with a dark side. And sometimes measures are totally bright. In other words, there's very little, if any, dark side. But there are some measures where you can only see half the moon. And these measures must be abandoned. The Peter Drucker abandoned because they are destroying value. Let me explain one, simple one. KFC wanted to measure chicken waste. And so KFC wanted to organize chicken waste and reduce it. So what they did, they said to all managers, the unit with the lowest chicken waste will win this big prize. Guess how the manager won it? He told all his staff, when somebody comes through the driveway and asks for fried chicken, which of course is everybody, take the chicken out of the freezer and put it in the fryer. But boss, they said, it will take 14 minutes. And the boss said, I don't care. I want zero chicken waste. Well, after 1 week, they got zero chicken waste. They were made national heroes. But the next week's results came in and they were zero as well, because anybody who'd waited 14 minutes for fast chicken would never come back again. And you will have measures like this in your organization. And we must make sure that you find them and sort them. So everybody, there are some very important rules about designing and wording measures. And I will give you a beta version of my new chapter so you can read it and work with it. So you're going to get a couple of chapters from my new book and you'll be able to print them out. And please promise me not to load it on the internet. An example of rewording. Number of staff employee suggestions received in a month may be a measure, but we can change it by looking at number of employee suggestions implemented by team. So now we can see which teams are really doing some things in this area and those that are not. Or number of employee suggestions to be implemented next week, next fortnight. So this is a future measure. Who is going to do something next week, next fortnight, and implement something that their employees have suggested? If you've got a zero and you keep on getting zeros there, you certainly are not listening to your employees in your team. What about measuring training? Instead of percentage of staff attending scheduled training, why don't we look at the list of departments who have not registered staff to attend an in-house course? Now, everybody, we come to the end and we're going to just have a time for some questions. Could we, one area is to attend a 2-day accreditation workshop. And the next thing to look at is go to my website and download the material I've prepared for you. It will take me a couple of days to get those promises ready. And lastly, on my website, you can play the British Airways story in its full glory by accessing my website. There's plenty of recordings of that story. And if your management are interested, then you're on the journey. These are the current books, I believe, that are worth getting. And you'll see those books when I give you the slides. The password for this is called digital_era. Now, with that, I'd like now to just go for some questions. I'm conscious of the time. Do we have 5 minutes left? Okay. Okay. So, everybody, a question. We talk about hiring the right people, getting the right fit, the right person for the job, etc. However, eventually we meet people who can trick us during recruitment. What would you see as a successful hiring rate? Well, I agree with you that for first thing, as you all know, the common interview as we conduct it in many organizations is not enough a predictor, particularly if the person who hasn't been trained. I believe the secret to better recruiting is to have a very powerful HR function. I am a supporter of Jack Welch when he says that HR should sit not only as equals to the chief financial officer and the CIO, but in fact, the HR general manager should have their office next door to the CEO. And when we've got HR heavily involved in recruiting, heavily involved in training managers, and managers now taking more time, and that we invest more layers of interviews in this process. Because I will say something to you that is plainly obvious. A good vacancy is far better than a poor recruitment. A good vacancy is far better than a poor recruitment. We can never strive, I don't think, as you've acknowledged, for 100%. But certainly, if we stop right now, right tomorrow, anybody going into an interview where HR have not yet seen the questions, and that person who's the manager, they must be checked to make sure that they have seen and read the CV and prepared. Otherwise, the person coming through the door becomes a chameleon. They've done their preparation, and they'll turn red, white, blue, and yellow, depending on what color is asked. And that is how the recruitment process fails. I know a company called Cafe Pacific, and I will give you their story that I wrote and why they do not know what poor recruitment is and why that organization doesn't know what turnover is either. It's a very interesting story which I'll share. So another question. Do you prefer individual KPIs or team KPIs? Most definitely, a KPI is always connected around the team. If, however, there's a team of one, yes, one person. But if we're talking about lake planes in the sky, that KPI measure would also have impacted a couple of teams in operations that were working very closely with that. The front desk, the people taking the bags off, the people refueling the plane, and the people loading the passengers on. So all that would be very linked. So in answer to your question, a KPI that works will be very rarely just an individual. It will be a KPI. But the phone call will go through to the team leader. But another question. In the near future, do you think there's a possibility to have no KPIs at all in a company. I wrote a paper suggesting that maybe if in your company measures are so dysfunctional, it would be far better, far wiser to abandon everyone. And just like the medical profession, when they have a very sick person, sometimes they zero that patient, their immune system, everything to ground zero and build it back. And that may be a strategy to work. But if you want a company on that good to great journey, the company that you have joined, striving to be its very best, you will only get there. And you will only stay on that journey if you have critical success factors in place in every office and every wall, and you have KPIs, performance indicators, result indicators, and KRIs supporting it. And with that, I say farewell to you all. And I look forward to getting some feedback with Doro to see how you in Romania want to work with this. Because I can guarantee you that together we can do something. With that, I say farewell and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you very much, David. Appreciate your effort. And say hello to Jerry. Thanks again. Okay, no other questions for David Parmenter?
There's actually one more question I wrote in the chat. If you can answer that too, that would be
great. Okay, yes, I've got it. How do you identify the toxic KPIs in an organization? There's another great question. So the first thing to identify a toxic measure is simply to ask the workforce. And typically they'll be the operational workforce and say, what does this measure encourage you to do? What is it targeting? And they will, and the first level of dysfunctionality will come out straight away. And then the second way of finding it is simply by observation. Watching, being with the team as they're preparing and monitoring and seeing this measure, throwing information around and what they are rushing to do. And it's through these two techniques that the KPI team can really understand how toxic that measure is. And as soon as you find it, there should be no hesitation but to abandon it right there on the spot. The KPI team should be empowered to do that abandonment immediately. And that sends a message through the organization. And I know that everybody listening to me today has seen a toxic measure at work, corrupting staff, corrupting best practice, and worst of all, affecting the job satisfaction of that young talent that's come into the organization. I wish you well in throwing out these toxic measures and replacing them with measures that will take you in to the 21st century in a shape and a form that's worthy of a Romanian organization. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Wish you good night. Before in your country now it's almost 9, 10. And I hope to see you soon in Romania for certification and for sure to try to have 5 days online. Okay. Thanks again. Thanks again.